Despite all we've achieved, I cannot continue my re-election campaign.
Eric Adams, one and done. We knew that was going to happen. So now let's get on to the real race. Zoran Mandani, Cuomo, Sliwa.
The name is Mandani. M-A-M-D-A-N-I. You should learn how to say it.
Three-word solutions are great on social media. Yeah, except in reality, they're all BS.
Everybody will find out what the billionaires are trying to do on behalf of Cuomo to affect this election. Not me.
You know why I think you're making it up, Mr. Sliwa? Because you have made it up many times before.
It's exactly as it was in the primary. He wanted a one-on-one. We beat him by 13 points. We're going to do the same again.
I'm in it the whole way. It would be fruitless for the president or anybody from the White House, his family, friends, some of whom I know, to try to encourage me to drop out.
Good evening, good evening. Great to see everybody here. Good to see you. I'm Errol Lewis, the political anchor at Spectrum News New York 1. I'm joined here. I'm joined here by my colleagues, Courtney Gross and Bobby Cusa. And we thank you all for joining us here tonight for New York Decides. We have got just a few days, 36 days, until Election Day, and we've got plenty to talk about. You came on a very, very interesting night. And I just want to, but before we get started, I just want to say there's been a lot of talk about threats to democracy, about problems that we have, about what's going on at 26 Federal Plaza, what's going on in other cities, what we see happening all around the country, including here in New York. And I want you all to give yourselves a round of applause for doing democracy. I mean, this is really the antidote, the answer and the antidote to any fears that our democracy is in trouble, is that we get together, we talk, we figure some things out, we go out and tell our friends. And let me say hello to our online viewing audience. We got a lot of people who are watching on the live stream, and we have a way for you all to get involved. Please sort of jot down your comments, and we'll figure out a way to bring it into the conversation a little bit later. So we've got some great guests for you. The cash bar is going to be open all night. Feel free to indulge. And we've got a lot to talk about. We actually haven't had a chance to really sort of put our heads together and figure out what the heck just happened yesterday. So we're going to talk for a little while. We're going to introduce some of our guests. We're going to talk with you some more as well. But first, let's give it to Courtney to take it away.
Courtney Gross, investigative reporter at New York 1. Thank you again for all of you coming tonight. You know, it's a beautiful day out, and it's important to talk about our local democracy, like Errol was saying. Now, interestingly enough, we had this whole thing scripted out. We knew exactly what we were going to talk about. It was going to be an off-topic episode, except a primer for the election, where we would go candidate by candidate, and then yesterday happened. So, like Errol said, we haven't had a chance to catch up on it, so I'm going to start with Errol for this part of the conversation. Is we've been talking on set, we've been talking on Inside City Hall, we've been talking on Off Topic for weeks now, guessing what was going to happen. Was the mayor actually going to drop out? And then, whoa, what happened yesterday? He dropped out. I mean, were you surprised? I feel like we sat across from each other in the New York 1 newsroom, and we've been debating a little bit about whether or not it was going to happen.
Yeah. I was, shocked but not surprised, right? The actual moment it would happen was very much up in the air. But I had a sense from a few weeks back, in part based on what the reporters were bringing back to us, and in part what I was hearing from some of the political insiders, was that the mayor was looking for an off-ramp, that they found it very frustrating in the mayor's political camp that he was polling in the single digits, and that no matter what they did, they couldn't move those numbers. They thought they had a record to run on, and he did. He had a decent record to run on. He had some achievements that he could argue were worthy of a second term, but he never quite found the right words. He never could sort of counter what apparently were some of the hesitations or concerns that people had around his court case, the relationship with Trump. There were a lot of problems, and he didn't want to address them head on, or he thought he could sort of go around it, and it just didn't seem to be working. So my sense was that if he had a chance to retire undefeated, which he now has. He'll be able to retire and say, I never lost an election that he ran in, that it might be worth it rather than fight to the end and lose. And then there's this question about what happens to the $3+ million in his campaign account, which is a very significant consideration we can get into later.
Yeah, well, we can get into it now. My sources had been telling me from a couple of weeks ago when this idea of becoming the ambassador to Saudi Arabia was first posed, was one thing that was hanging over the mayor's head was this $3 million in debt he has to his lawyers because they defended him over the course of a year after that corruption indictment. And he was just trying to figure out how he was going to be able to pay off those legal debts. And it's unclear if he's received the answer. There's some speculation that he might be able to take that campaign cash, transfer it to a state account, and then pay off all of his legal fees. I'm assuming, Bobby, that you also have heard the same thing.
Look,
That this
you're the
is
campaign finance expert. Is that going to work? I mean, that's part of the speculation, right? Is that he has all these unpaid bills, but in his video yesterday, and what he's been saying for weeks now is that he has been hurt by the media speculation, right? We've been reporting and speculating about whether he was going to get out of the race. And even though he himself has been hinting that he might get out of the race, somehow it's our fault that we have been talking about this, and therefore it's hard for him to raise money and to win support. And so, when he put out this video yesterday, he didn't acknowledge any sort of anything that might have gone wrong with his campaign, any sort of shortcomings in the way he's governed. He blamed media speculation about his future, and he blamed the city's campaign finance board for denying him millions of dollars in matching funds, right? So it was everyone else's fault. It wasn't his. And so, it was a lot of finger pointing. But as to whether or not we were surprised, I mean, the truth is none of us were that surprised, right? I mean, anybody who
we were surprised it happened on a Sunday, in the middle of our Sunday plans. I was on the playground with my child, and I saw Bob's text, and I was like, oh. Okay.
I was helping run a lemonade stand with my 8-year-old daughter.
We all have parental duties, apparently, on the weekends.
But, think back to, we actually saw this happen before in June with the primary, right? The mayor opted out of running in the primary because he saw that he didn't really have a chance of winning. And then, for weeks there was a question of, is he really going to run? He was very slow in standing up a re-election campaign, right? Any kind of campaign apparatus. And then all of a sudden, a few weeks ago, he goes down to Florida and meets with some of Trump's team. And then there's talk of an ambassadorship to Saudi Arabia. And so there was this speculation, again, that he was going to take a job with the Trump administration in exchange for dropping out of the race in order to help defeat Zoran Mandani. Then, as I'm sure you guys saw, he goes outside a Greasy Mansion on a Friday afternoon and has this very defiant, fiery speech that he gives, where he calls Andrew Cuomo a liar and a snake, and he says he's the only one who can beat Mandani. And it was kind of convincing, right? I mean, he was so fired up. I was like, wow, maybe this guy really is running. And then the following week, just like a few days later, he had this meeting with some business leaders that was set up by ABNY, the Association for Better New York. And then it was reported that in the meeting, he told people that he was open to getting out of the race. And there was this quote from the meeting where he said, I love this city more than I dislike Andrew. Meaning Andrew Cuomo, of course. So, insinuating that, he would get out of the race for the betterment of the city in order to help Cuomo beat Mandani. So, it's been this back and forth. And so for weeks, this was all sort of building and building and building. And after that happened, his campaign put out a statement saying, remember this? He said, his campaign spokesman said they were going to conduct their own independent polling.
Yes.
And then make a decision. And I was like, make a decision?
We just had 4 polls.
I thought you already made a decision. What is the decision that remains to be made? So, we saw this coming.
I mean, when they called it speculation, it's really the wrong word. It was just reporting. Because this was people not saying, oh, I heard he might want to drop out. This was people saying, I made contact with the White House and asked if they would give him a job. And so, we weren't the only news organization having these conversations. And so people said, we did what we do. We report. We're not going to hide information from you guys. So we said, look, what we're hearing is that people are trying to cut a deal. There's one avenue of conversations happening with the Trump White House. There's another avenue of conversations happening in the private sector. All of it is contingent on him getting out of the race, and so we'll see what happens. That's what we reported. And I know he didn't keep a perfect secrecy around that the way he might have wanted to, but that's between him and his team.
But let me just say on the campaign finance, too, I mean, he's blaming the media and the campaign finance board for not allowing him to raise enough money to really mount a race. But he had $3.5 million, which is not nothing.
He posted a good, I mean, this is getting a little in the weeds, but this is what we're all here for, right? So one of the last campaign finance filings is he posted a good amount of money that he had raised. It didn't appear like he was having that much of a tough time raising money, but I think it was honestly more of the legal debt that was hanging over his head than necessarily the ability to raise money for a potential new campaign. Thinking about the next steps for Eric Adams, Errol, what are we hearing could be the next steps for him? I mean, there's no indication that he's going to leave City Hall. He's going to have the next 3 months to be a lame duck mayor. We'll see what he can accomplish in the next 3 months.
Yeah, well, we haven't, it's been a while since we saw the end of an administration coming in this way. Yeah. But there's going to be a big scramble at City Hall. There are a lot of people who want to continue in city service. They're going to need jobs, because if your job is discretionary, working with Eric Adams, well, he's leaving in, 93 days or whatever it might be. So less than 100 days from now, everybody there is going to basically be looking for work. There'll be a lot of that. My guess is that there will also be some attempts to either put a good face on certain problems within this administration or frankly, hide them or shift the blame elsewhere. We all know you can go agency by agency. We know where the problems are. There are problems with processing benefits for low-income New Yorkers. There are huge problems at Rikers Island. There are problems, frankly, in the police department. There are ongoing scandals and lawsuits that are still bubbling around. So I think there's going to be some furniture rearranging, so to speak. There are going to be people looking for jobs. Whatever deal the mayor, actual or implied, has with a future employer, there may be something perceptible there, although I suspect we won't necessarily know until the very end.
And there'll be some intrigue as to who the mayor may keep on, right? I'm thinking specifically of the police commissioner, Jessica Tisch.
Who the next mayor?
Who the next mayor, whoever wins on November 4th, and we'll talk about that as well. Are they going to keep on Jessica Tisch as the police commissioner, who has been, fairly well regarded? There's been a lot of talk about whether Mandani will keep her or not. And, some of these other commissioners, of course, there's a huge amount of turnover, but there are always some holdovers. There's some people in the city administration who've been there since de Blasio was mayor. Not many. Mitchell Katz was on the show the other night.
Yeah, and he's been
Health
there
and Hospitals. He's been there.
I think that very much depends on who the next mayor of New York City actually is. If this is a Mandani administration, one would think that many of the commissioners would end up getting turned over. Actually, all of the commissioners would end up getting turned over, because this is a very different type of administration than an Eric Adams administration, which leads me to the next question of, now that Adams is out officially, who stands to benefit? I mean, we've all been talking about this on TV for the last 24 hours, and I've said, I don't know about you guys, I've said Cuomo.
I think it's clearly Andrew Cuomo stands to benefit the most. The question is by how much, right? I mean, the polling we've seen, if you believe the polling in the past month or so.
And polls are not always right. We all know that. The polls are not always real.
But we talk about them a lot, and because sometimes
well, gives us stuff to talk about. We're a 24-hour news network. We got to talk about the polls.
But Mandani is ahead by something like 22 points, thereabouts.
Consistently across multiple polls in the course of September.
And so and then Eric Adams has been getting something like 7-9 points in these polls. So even in a universe where you take those 9 points, say, that Eric Adams was getting, and Andrew Cuomo gets all those votes, and he's not going to get all of them, that doesn't even go halfway to closing the gap between him and Mandani. So, I mean, this helps Andrew Cuomo, and he talked about it today in an interview with Errol, but it doesn't get him nearly all the way there. And in order for him to get even close to getting all the way there, I think we'd have to see Curtis Sliwa, the Republican nominee, get out of the race, and he has shown, we can talk more about this.
That is not going to happen.
No.
That is not going to happen.
I mean, the polls that have happened, or one of the polls that did the head-to-head matchup said that there could be a 4-point race, which in many cases is within the margin of error if it ends up being Cuomo Mandani.
That's right. Look, there are a couple of things. One thing to keep in mind is that polls are just a snapshot. And just as if you were taking a photo of a bunch of people in motion, you can take a picture of them now, and they're going to move around. You know, Mandani is not going to just sit there and say, hey, I've got a 20-point lead. Let's just, you know, continue to do whatever we were doing. They're going to be dynamic. They're going to keep trying to get new endorsements, find new voters, register new voters, bring out people who pollsters have never talked to, and make sure that they have their strategy in place. There is this Cuomo strategy, I think, of trying to get Black, Latino, and Hasidic or Orthodox Jewish voters. That's sort of the Eric Adams base. Go and talk with some of those people and some of the institutions that gather those votes and see if you can get them. But really what's going to happen, and all of them are going to be trying to do this, is they want to change the conversation. As it stands, if you froze everything right now, even with a 20-point lead, Mandani doesn't necessarily win, right? Because a majority of the votes are going elsewhere. Cuomo doesn't win because he's still far behind Mandani. Curtis Sliwa doesn't win because he's not even up to the 28% that he got when he ran 4 years ago. So they're all going to be dynamic. They're all going to try and change things. There are a couple of different events where you can try and change all of the rules of the game and move the pieces on the board. One is the upcoming debate that we're going to be hosting. That should be good. The other, though, is the unknown. You know, the unknown. I mean, think back to 2013 and that Dante de Blasio ad that Bill de Blasio came up with. It was just a very, very good ad, and I see heads nodding, like you remember it. It was over 10 years ago, and you still remember it. It was that good of an ad. Somebody might do that. It might be Andrew Cuomo. It might be Curtis Sliwa. It might be Mandani.
I mean, but it's getting a little late for that, right? I mean,
that's why they call it an October surprise. It's not October.
That's true. We got a couple days.
It's
48 hours.
Yeah.
But in terms of, you know, Cuomo versus Mandani, they already had months to go at it, right, back during the primary season. So anything that Cuomo is going to figure out that he could do to, you know, to undercut Mandani, he probably would have tried by now, right?
But don't you think he's moderating a little bit?
Mandani.
I think, well, both. Let's start with Cuomo. Don't you think that he's tacked a little bit? I mean, I don't want to say the left or the right. I think he changed a little bit of his rhetoric. So, I mean, maybe not with your interview today when I looked at actually what he had said, but he changed a little bit of his rhetoric when it comes to Gaza. He started saying that there should be a ceasefire. We know that he has been very, very pro-Israel and pro-Netanyahu. We know he had some work during his off years, we call them, potentially defending him or trying to come up with some strategy defending Netanyahu in front of the International Criminal Court. But more recently, he's talked about affordability. He's talked about
that's right.
the war in Gaza should end.
He's talking about different issues. He's got a lot more young people around him. I can just tell you anecdotally, we went and met him, and I interviewed him in a park tonight. We're going to play part of the interview on New York One tonight. It'll be up on the website, and we're going to play more of it tomorrow. He's just got young people around him. He's got a different kind of sensibility. He's been a lot more nimble and active on social media. He's been hanging around in these mosques. You know, this was a question that came up in the debate. Hey, you know, Andrew Cuomo, you were mayor for more than 10 years. How come you never visited a mosque? That's what the Muslim community had been saying. He couldn't. He said he thought he had, but he couldn't remember if he ever had. Well, that's a thing of the past. Every week you're looking, and there he is at Jummah. He's at this mosque. He's at that mosque. He's there. He's there. Well, I mean, but this is what you want, right? He's out there trying. He's trying to figure it out. He's trying to pivot his strategy. He's trying to take votes away from his adversary. He's trying to do the things that politicians do in order to win an election.
And he continues to attack Mandani, but I think he's taken a little bit of a different tack. And in part on the Israel-Gaza issue, he hasn't gone at him quite so hard for being an anti-Semite, right? Because I think he saw that line of attack didn't really work that effectively in the primary. And
the public sentiment has shifted
and we saw, again, there's been polling done. I mean, there was a poll out earlier this month from Siena and the New York Times that found public sentiment, at least in New York, is far more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause than it is to Israel. And respondents to the poll found that they thought Mandani's attitude towards the conflict was much better than Cuomo's. So I think, you know, he sees that. He does his own polling. I think he's adjusted accordingly. What he's been doing the past couple of months is trying to paint Mandani as an extremist. And he has really zeroed in on some of these democratic socialist positions that Mandani has adopted in the past, but now has either, you know, sort of distanced himself from, or at least de-emphasized, right? So, Cuomo has this thing, he keeps hammering on the fact that Mandani wants to decriminalize prostitution. And it is true, he has, in the past, his name is on a bill in Albany to decriminalize prostitution, but it's not something he's talking about in the race. But Cuomo wants to remind people that these are the democratic socialist positions that Mandani has stood by for all these years. And he has said in the last couple of days, I think he even said in an interview with you, people don't know that Mandani believes this stuff. Now, I don't know if that's true. I mean, I think a lot of this has been aired before, and a lot of those, people who voted for him in the primary were well aware of his views, right? So I don't know how well that argument holds water, but that seems to be what he's sort of throwing at the wall.
It's a tricky kind of a strategy, and I think a somewhat risky one. One thing that I've noticed, and I heard it again today talking with Andrew Cuomo, is that he's saying this isn't about me versus him. This is about a philosophy versus another philosophy. I took that as an indirect way of him acknowledging that Mandani's actually a very likable guy. He's a good politician. He's friendly. He's young. People like him. He's got a lot of energy. Trying to make him into a scary, dangerous person isn't necessarily going to work. So you have to take a step back and say, well, his philosophy is dangerous. The people he runs with are not likable, and try and maybe shift the focus a little bit there.
As we wrap up this portion of the event tonight, Mandani, like you said, Bobby, is 20 points ahead. Maybe Cuomo picks up a little bit, but it doesn't appear. What would change the race as of this point? Can anyone stop Mandani? And how much does this say about the progressive power that perhaps was in charge during the de Blasio administration? Or are they coming back into power?
I think of this as, look, the fundamentals, and I referenced this yesterday. There's a long piece that ran over the weekend in the Wall Street Journal, well worth looking at. And it talks about a lot of what they call the Occupy generation. Was anybody at Occupy? Anybody here? Yeah, see? That was a moment. It was here in New York, but it was a global phenomenon, definitely a national phenomenon. There were a lot of people who took to the streets because the economics fundamentally are not working with them. And they are sick to death of being told to wait, to adopt the same old strategies, to vote for the same old people, to do what the party tells them to do. And that was kind of a primal scream saying, no, enough. As was, frankly, the 2016 election of Donald Trump. Primal scream from the rural white working class. They were like, no, we are not going to have another crop fail and pick up scraps and have Hollywood laugh at us and have Wall Street cheat us and have Washington ignore us. We're going to go in a totally different direction with this disruptive force. That's what the Bernie Sanders phenomenon is. That's what the Donald Trump phenomenon is. And I think that's what's really driving Mandani. I don't think it's not government-owned grocery stores, and it's not even the rent freeze. Frankly, those are symbolic.
But they're such palatable, easy messages. There's something to be said about just the structure of his campaign, able to bite off in these 3-word phrases. Freeze the rent, city-owned grocery stores, fast and free buses. That's 4, but whatever.
And the generational divide, obviously, right?
Yes.
Mandani is half of Cuomo's age, and in so many ways, he can point to Andrew Cuomo as being, this relic of another era, and he's bringing youth and energy, and so that's part of the selling point as well. But at the end of the day, this also works out to math. When you have Mandani, who at this point may not break 50%, right? He could potentially get elected without having a majority support from New Yorkers. But when you've got 2 other guys in the running who could split the remainder of those votes, that's going to make it a lot easier for him to get elected.
That just doesn't seem like that's possible as of this point. And I wonder, since the primary, has Mandani done anything to appeal to the voters that he didn't win over during the primary? There is obviously a broad swath, like Bobby was talking about, of the electorate, maybe 55% of the people in New York City, who don't want a 33-year-old Democratic socialist to be mayor of New York City.
Well, he's not running on being a 33-year-old Democratic socialist. He's running on affordability. He's running on free and fast buses and a rent freeze and, government-owned grocery stores or whatever it might be.
Childcare.
And the childcare, which is the big one, actually, which is dollar-wise the biggest one and would have the hugest impact. So and those are, good symbolic messages for this underlying concern about the gap that I asked Andrew Cuomo about today between the median household income in New York City being around $79,000, which is about $6,500 a month, and the median, half above, half below, the median rent in New York, which is something like $3,400. So on average, you're paying way more than half of your gross income. This is before you've, taxes and everything else. It's just not tenable. It's just not workable. And people have said it every which way they can. And I think that's what's powering this election. And everybody's trying to figure out what to do about it, including Curtis Sliwa.
Bobby, final thoughts? He brought up Curtis. We didn't get to Curtis. Maybe some final thoughts on Curtis taking off the beret.
It's funny.
This is a big deal. I didn't even recognize him.
I know
They put up his ad, and I was like, who's that guy?
Yeah, it's like Clark Kent. You put on the glasses and like, what happened to Superman?
Right. So there's all this talk about Curtis removing losing the beret, but he's still wearing it all the time. I mean, it's so part of his identity.
His most recent ad, he's had 2 ads talking about ad strategy in the de Blasio administration. The first ad was, featuring his wife mostly, trying to appeal to women, and this most recent ad, he takes off the beret and he's talking about crime in the city. A very, very similar message that Cuomo had during the Pride.
Yeah, it's funny. I did a story last week about the Conservative Party candidate who's running in the race, who nobody's ever heard of. Her name is Irene Estrada. But we asked Curtis Sliwa, why didn't you get the Conservative Party nomination? And he said, I'm not a conservative. He said, I'm pro-gay rights, I'm pro-gun rights, I'm pro-abortion rights. And, we forget that there are plenty of Republicans out there who are not, Trump, MAGA Republicans, who are Republicans in the more traditional sense, right, that we remember from the pre-Trump era. And so, Curtis Sliwa is not, he's not a raging MAGA Republican. He's, when you hear him talk, he doesn't sound like he's that far off from some of the other.
He's a law and order liberal.
Law and order liberal. So.
And just a New York character.
And he's so well known. So he got 28% in 2021. He's not going to win quite that much this time, but. As we said, he says he's only leaving this race in a pine box, right? So there's no way Trump is not bribing him with an ambassadorship, or there's nothing that's going to get him out of this race.
is not flipping him extra checks.
Last week he said that he's been bribed, right? This was this bombshell accusation he made without a lot of evidence backing it up, but he said he's been offered jobs worth millions of dollars, and he somehow claims that Andrew Cuomo was responsible for this. But he said, stop giving me these offers. If you call me again, I'm going to record the conversation and report it to the authorities.
Yes.
So Sliwa's in it to win it.
Yes. There's nothing they can offer him that's as interesting as being Curtis Sliwa. So that's where that lands up. Let's bring out our first guest, folks. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Our first guest, she is an Emmy Award-winning actress from not one but 2 hit HBO shows set right here in New York City. She also made her mark off-screen as a passionate activist. And most importantly for us, in 2018, she ran for governor. I know some of you may remember she took on Andrew Cuomo in the Democratic primary, and she has remained deeply involved in politics ever since. She is a proud advocate for LGBTQ+ rights, an active member of the Democratic Socialists of America, and a strong supporter of Zohran Mamdani this year. So we are so excited to have her with us. Please join me in welcoming Cynthia Nixon.
Hey, everybody.
All right.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Great to see you. Great to see you.
You too.
Let's catch everybody up. It's been 3 years. Well, I should say you were a candidate for governor in 2018, 3 years before Andrew Cuomo ended up resigning. What have you been doing on stage and screen since? Let's make sure everybody knows where.
Well, okay. I have, let's see, right after I ran for governor, I was on a very successful Ryan Murphy miniseries called Ratched, which was starring Sarah Paulson, and I was her love interest, and it was a kind of a prequel to the Nurse Ratched character from One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest. I've been on 2 different shows, The Gilded Age, which will start shooting again in February.
There you go.
And Just Like That, which is a sequel series to Sex and the City, which wrapped up its 3-year run this year. I'm starting rehearsal. I did a play last year called The 7-Year Disappear, which was really funny because it had been 7 years since I was on stage, but that was just a coincidence. And next month, I'm starting rehearsal for a Broadway show called Marjorie Prime.
Fantastic, fantastic,
yeah.
fantastic. Tell us about Mandani and why you are supporting him.
So, as you said, I ran for governor in 2018, and so that year there were a bunch of, I'm sure you're all political junkies and you all know what I'm talking about, these anti-IDC candidates. Do you know what that is? Yeah. So who ran, and I think there were 8 of them who ran and 6 of them got elected, and we really ran very much in tandem. Also, that was the year that I ran, Julia Salazar got elected to the New York State Senate, and she was the first Democratic Socialist to be elected to the New York State Legislature. And she and I cross-endorsed each other. And then the following year, Zoran and 3 other DSA candidates ran, and we supported, my wife and I, all of them plus Julia. And they all got in, and then there were 5 Democratic Socialists. And we have remained close to those folks, and they have been joined by more Democratic Socialists. But Zoran was the one that we remained the closest to, I would say. And he's really great at staying in touch with us, and we were wildly impressed with all of them, but especially him. And, you know, a few years back, he did an incredible thing where he, you know, taxi drivers were having such a terrible time. People were literally committing suicide outside City Hall for their inability to pay the predatory lending mortgages on their medallions and put food on the table. And de Blasio didn't seem to want to fix this problem. And Zoran did something that he tends to do, which is that he takes on a problem that seems completely unsolvable, a Gordian knot, and he just... So what he did was he staged a hunger strike for, I think, almost 3 weeks outside City Hall. Him and a bunch of taxi drivers and some electeds kind of came in and out, and they got de Blasio to change his mind. And it was like an incredible victory. And so I went down there, and I did not hunger strike, but I was, you know, there supporting and trying to bring attention to it. And, you know, we've just stayed in touch with him on a number of other initiatives, like, you know, healthcare for all and things like that. And he spoke to my wife and I guess last summer, and talked to us a bunch because we're, you know, political friends and allies, and also because he knows how involved we had been in the de Blasio campaign, the de Blasio administration. So he really wanted to bend our ears.
So at that point, was he telling you that he was considering a run for mayor?
He was telling us that he was considering it, yeah.
And kind of feeling out your support.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, in 2018, I remember, I covered your campaign a little bit, and I remember you cross-endorsed Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez.
Yes.
And I went to the press conference, it was in Queens, and I remember there was a documentary crew following her around.
Yeah.
And nobody knew who she was, right? She
Right.
was this insurgent. You know, people kind of started to get a sense there was something going on here. She was running against Joe Crowley. And I remember looking at this documentary crew following around AOC and thinking, what a waste of time. What are these guys doing? Like, this woman has no chance of winning in this race. And then, lo and behold. But I wonder what sort of lessons you learned from your run as governor. Like, when you look back, do you first of all, do you have any regrets about what you did? And, I mean, when you look back on it now, what do you feel like were some of the lessons you took?
I mean, I guess I learned a lot of things. You know, in some ways, I think, so I played Nancy Reagan at one point. I've played a couple of First Ladies. I played Nancy Reagan, and so I am not a fan of Nancy Reagan. So I tried very hard to immerse myself in the Reagans and their philosophy, and people, you know, Peggy Noonan, who were fans, to try and get into that headspace in her book, and I mean, Nancy's book. And anyway, I came across this quote from Ronald Reagan when he ran for governor of California, And he said, you know, people say, what kind of training is it being an actor for then being a candidate or an elected official? And he said, I don't understand how anybody who hasn't been an actor beforehand could actually do this job. People know who you are. People are interested in you. You're used to interacting with the public. You're comfortable in front of people. And perhaps most importantly, you are trained. It is your bread and butter for someone to hand you a number of pages with a speech on them moments before you go out, and you have to go out and read those pages and make them sound like they're your ideas that you're just thinking of at that moment. So I feel like being an actor, my background, and also an activist, obviously, those were very helpful. But I felt also one of the things that I learned is, in some ways, contrary, you know, Reagan wasn't a very good actor, really. In some ways, being an actor is terrible background, because as an actor, you strive to tell the truth, always, right? To set up conditions in your head that you believe, and then let happen to your body and your face and everything what happens. Whereas a politician, the opposite is true. You cannot let all the things that you think and fear play across your face or enter your voice or enter your body posture. You just have to project confidence and optimism and a sense that you're going to win no matter what you're actually feeling inside. But I will tell you, as I said, I learned a lot of things, and one of the things that I learned and continue to learn, because it continues to be demonstrated to me, is how hungry people are for a true progressive candidate. And even somebody who comes in a package of an actress who's never run for or held political office, that I still run into people, as I was telling you guys in the dressing room, I still run into people who come up to me and say, I voted for you, please run again, I so believed in your candidacy. And yeah, maybe they liked me because they liked Miranda, or they liked some other part they'd seen me in, but I think what they liked was my platform, which was, you know, the way we developed our platform was we took all the people, the activists that had been advocating for, you know, affordable housing, for a better MTA, for health care for all, for a Green New Deal, and we brought them in and they wrote the platform. And this is to some extent, you know, why AOC got elected. This is why de Blasio got elected, and this is why I believe in November, Mandani, who has surprised so many people, come out of nowhere, but this is why he will, I think, be the next mayor of New York.
This is the portion of the evening when we start talking about And Just Like That.
Okay, great.
No, I'm kidding. I liked the ending, but we're going to actually stick with politics. I feel like that's probably what more people want to talk about. When you were running, my former colleague and I, who used to host this podcast, Zach Fink, you may remember him from the campaign trail, we used to debate whether or not you could win.
Right.
And we would look at Twitter, it was still called Twitter then, and we would, you know, look at the metrics and be like, oh, so many people are liking this, so many people are into her, maybe she can win, maybe this is going to happen. And then you ended up with 33, 34, something like that. Statewide, obviously. And I feel like that has been the cap for any anti-establishment candidate on a statewide run since then. Do you think that, you know, looking at Mandani, that you would have the ability, or some candidate would have the ability to take that kind of campaign statewide now, and would it change? Is that the cap, the 33%?
Well, so whose candidacy are you talking about? Mine and Zephyr Teachout?
An anti-establishment candidate, more of a DSA-style candidate.
But Zephyr, I think the world of Zephyr, but again, Zephyr and I are two lovely ladies with no actual electoral experience, running for governor of New York State. So the fact that neither of us won, I mean, right, it was really a referendum on Andrew Cuomo. And there was like a third of the populace that like hates Andrew Cuomo and will take, you know, a chicken salad sandwich over Andrew Cuomo, right?
Yeah.
So I don't think, I mean, I think you know, you take someone like Zoran or you know, someone with even not quite the incredible package that Zoran presents, and I think someone with real electoral experience, who ran a real campaign, I don't think that's an impossibility.
Do you think there are some parallels between your candidacy and his candidacy now?
I mean, no. I mean, we both ran against Andrew Cuomo. We're both progressive. That's kind of it. I mean, we share a lot of the same beliefs. We share a lot of the same values and platform ideas. But no, I mean, I'm an actress, and he's an elected official.
What is your response to Andrew Cuomo running for mayor? What was your visceral response to his candidacy?
Yuck. I mean, yuck. I don't know. On the one hand, it didn't surprise me. You know, I mean, I think, what else is he going to do? He likes to be in office. You know, and I think we were all, even people like my wife and I, who were, you know, were such Zoran supporters from the moment he told us he was considering running. And we knew all the potential that he held. But even from that vantage point, we thought it was very, very daunting, the idea of someone who's been, you know, he's been gone a while, people have forgotten all the terrible things that he's done. He is like a New York brand. Some voters still think he's his dad. There's so many things going for him, and a wide field of progressives who, as happened last time, might divide the field.
Yeah.
But I think the fact of the matter is, Andrew Cuomo is a terrible campaigner. He is a very good fundraiser. He is very good at hobnobbing with billionaire donors, often Republican, behind closed doors. There is an expectation, whether it's justified or not, of a certain pay-to-play, access to power kind of a thing. He can raise money hand over fist. But he doesn't actually like interacting with the public, and he's not good at it, and he's not, frankly, very appealing, and he might be good threatening people behind closed doors, but he's not really very quick on his feet when he's debating or expressing his ideas or certainly interacting with the public.
Did you feel like you sort of put some chinks in his armor during that race in 2018? I mean, obviously you came up short, but I remember during that campaign, I felt like you managed to move him to the left on some, I guess, to the left, stage left, on some things like, I'm thinking of marijuana legalization. You came out.
So many things.
Yeah, I mean, where you came out and took a strong stance to his left, and then he did sort of moderate, right?
I mean, there was a long list. I can't remember all. Right, the Cynthia effect, right? They called it.
And so it was. I mean,
and Zephyr did the same thing. I mean, that's what everybody says about Zephyr. That's why we have banned why fracking was banned in New York State, was that Zephyr Teachout was running against Andrew Cuomo, and he had to do something.
Right. So
make himself seem progressive.
So in that sense, do you look back on it and see it as a success, the 2018 run?
Oh, yes. I mean, I did everything I could. I tried really hard to win. I never really had any expectation that I was going to win. But the thing that was really galling me, well, it was hard because no one would run against him. Because if you actually are in politics, he's so powerful. He's so famously vindictive. Like, your career in politics after that run is over as soon as you open your mouth against him. But the thing that was really, that I couldn't stand by and watch happen is that we have, you know, such a blue state, 2-to-1, deep blue state, and that so much progressive legislation was just being held up in Albany because Andrew Cuomo was incentivizing all of these Democrats who had the majority to vote with the Republicans because he not only did he not want these progressive legislation, to pass because he didn't want to pay for it. He was getting himself ready for a presidential run. He didn't. And he didn't want to be the governor of a progressive state with all of these exciting, deep blue things. So he did all that stuff. And I thought, if I can run and I can get on television and I can be articulate and we can have just a fantastic platform, we can actually show voters and New Yorkers what our state was capable of and what was hanging in the balance and stopped up in Albany, education funding, perhaps for me, most importantly of all, that we could, show the emperor, not that the emperor has no clothes, but the emperor is blocking all these things that would make life better for so many New Yorkers.
Does that mean that you would never run for office ever again?
I will not run for office again. I mean, even when I ran, I have a profession that I've been doing since I'm 12 years old.
And you're successful, so not discounting
And
that.
I love my profession. Do you know what I mean? And so, for that reason alone, I would not want to. I left her for a little while. I came back. She was still there. I was very happy. Don't want to leave her a second time.
The other thing I really appreciated about your run, I used to cover transportation. That was my beat for many years. And it drove me crazy that everyone thought the mayor was in charge of the subway system, right? The mayor would always get, whoever the mayor was would get blamed for, whatever problem was going on. And you made it Cuomo's MTA, right? And you guys would go in because it was the summer of hell where there had been all these breakdowns in the subways, and you guys would go down there with the Cuomo's MTAs, and it kind of caught on, right?
Yes,
people
absolutely.
actually started to point the finger at the governor.
Cuomo uses the MTA like his ATM because he just kept taking wholesale just such huge chunks of money out of the MTA and sending it to all kinds of things, including upstate ski resorts.
Right.
Yeah.
Also, we were reflecting on the fact that vote for the homo, not for Cuomo was a brilliant.
A reversal
campaign.
of the thing that he supposedly penned himself,
Yes.
right, against Koch for his dad, yes.
Yeah.
Thinking, more currently, present tense, you are such a big Mandani supporter, and I'm not sure who in the crowd is, but there's a large constituency in New York City who are concerned. What do you say to them? What would you say to win them over? Or the people, I have a neighbor, and I live...
The ones who are frightened.
Yeah.
Do you mean like the people in East Hampton who are terrified? I don't know if you... I don't know if you saw Morgan Spector's reading of that.
It was very funny.
It was pretty funny, but yes.
But also, I have Jewish neighbors, and they come over, and they're like, they're scared. They're worried that he's anti-Semitic. I'm trying to think of some other constituencies that he may have ostracized, or some people believe he has ostracized over the years.
Right. I mean, I would say if you're frightened of Zoran Mamdani, all you have to do is listen to him for 5 minutes. I mean, he has, the situation in Israel-Palestine, not the least of which, maybe that is the most. He has taken on so many issues, democratic socialism, so many things, which have been, up to this point, a third rail in American politics, in democratic politics. And he has taken them on, and I think people have admired his courage to say what he thinks. But I think, more importantly, he has been able to explain what he thinks in a way that just makes sense. And, one of my favorite things, he was at a temple on the B'nai Jeshurun, I think, on the Upper West Side. And an older Jewish lady came up to him, and she, after listening to him, and she said, "I don't agree with you about everything. You know what I don't agree with you about. But I'm going to vote for you. I'm going to trust you. I'm going to believe in you." And he said, he quoted Ed Koch. And he said, Ed Koch said, "If you agree with me about 8 out of 12 things, you should vote for me. And if you agree with me about 12 out of 12 things, you should have your head examined. So I would really say that. I would really say, there is nothing to be afraid of here unless you're believing some kind of, frankly, very offensive stereotype of him, whatever that is, as a Muslim, as a South Asian, as a democratic socialist. Martin Luther King, said, you can call it democratic socialism, or you can call it, I can't remember what he said, but what it means is we have to do a better job at distributing the wealth of our great nation among all of its people. I think there's Zoran has put his finger on exactly the moment we're in. If you think about James Carville, it's the economy, stupid. This is the 2025 version of it. It's the affordability crisis, which is killing not only New York City, but all of America, and it is not improving, it is only widening it. And unless our Democratic candidates and electeds can actually say something to address it and to change it and to do something, we're just going to keep losing.
Okay, that brings us to the end of this segment. We promised we'd get you out of here on time. Thank you so much for coming by.
Thank you.
Thank you. Cynthia Nixon.
Thank you. Take care.
All right. I always forget that 2018 was the AOC year. There was a lot going on that year. Let's find out a little bit about who's here. And this is for podcast, which is primarily audio. There are cameras here, but make sure you make some noise. Who is here from the Bronx? Yeah, okay. Manhattanites, we are here in Chelsea. Okay. Brooklyn. Who's here from Queens? And did anybody cross over from Staten Island? All right. Wow. Thank you. All right. We appreciate you, brother.
We got one.
Yeah, man. And we'll take this a little at a time, but who has made up their mind about who they are going to vote for mayor? By some. Okay. Who is not for public consumption so much, but who truly is still trying to make up their mind? Okay, so it sounds like we've got some pretty convinced people here one way or the other. So now let's give it a try. There's only 3 candidates left. Who intends to vote for Curtis Sliwa? Wow. Okay.
I think we
got one. We got one.
Okay, yeah, okay, that's good. I see a fist in the air. There you go. Andrew Cuomo. Smattering? Okay, got to have some noise because it's audio. And I guess there are some Mandani fans here. Okay, that should be of some help to the candidates, and very helpful for us. We really do appreciate everybody who's here participating. Where are we now? Oh, next up, this is going to be great. This is somebody who you may see if you get up really early in the morning, or if you watch New York One in the morning. This is somebody who has been with, I guess he got here before all of us, right? Was Bob here?
I got to New York One just before him.
Just before
2003.
Bob Hardt is the political director of Spectrum News, and he oversees all of the political work that we do. That includes the shows and the podcasts and some upstate stuff. And he's going to, because he is a political historian, he's going to come up and join us for a few minutes, and we're going to talk about some mayors of the past. Where's Bob? There he is.
Hello, hello.
Okay. So now you told me, this happens all the time.
Yeah.
I've known this man for many, many decades at this point. And he just drops these little nuggets. I'm like, damn, I didn't know that. We actually, by Eric Adams dropping out yesterday, he actually made history. Explain that.
There's no mayor since the city was consolidated in 1898 who just decided, I'm not running for re-election, I'm out. And I went through the list, and you have one-term mayors like Abe Beame and David Dinkins, and you have mayors who were about to get indicted or were under corruption spotlight, like Mayor O'Dwyer or Jimmy Walker, who resigned and suddenly, in O'Dwyer's case, became ambassador to Mexico, and Jimmy Walker's case just went off with his mistress to Paris. But Adams is the first one to just say, basta, I'm throwing in the towel, I'm not running. And it really stood out to me. The closest I could come was George McClellan, who was mayor, who was the son of the famous Civil War general. He was a two-term mayor, Tammany mayor. After 2 terms, he wanted to run again, and Tammany's like, "No, we're done with you." So he wasn't on the ballot. But there's really been this is really a first. And we're also in the 21st century. Political normality has completely changed. So we're used to crazy things happening all the time. It's a big deal that the mayor of New York City is like not running for re-election, and we're just like, okay, who's going to win now? And we should all pause and realize this is a historical moment that probably won't happen again in our lifetimes. We even haven't had a mayor resign since O'Dwyer in 1950, so it's a big deal.
Yeah, it's worth keeping in mind also, in 1977, which was a well-known race, it was kind of a famous race, right, because it was the first one after the fiscal crisis. There were a lot of people who were considered political stars who all ran, and that was the year. It was Herman Badillo, and it was Ed Koch, and it was Mario Cuomo, and it was Percy Sutton, and Bella Abzug, all these people. But Abe Beame ran in that race. The sitting mayor.
The sitting mayor. This is how bad things were in 1977. The sitting mayor finished 3rd in the primary, didn't even make the runoff. And that's how nasty things were in the city in 1977. It was considered very embarrassing that he couldn't even make the cut. David Dinkins was obviously a different story. In 1993, the city was still dealing with a lot of drug-related crime. And in the rematch, Rudy Giuliani, who was a better candidate also in 1993 than 89, managed to beat him. But you really have to look for these kinds of things. You don't, since Dinkins, you really don't see an incumbent on the rocks like this.
Right. What does this race remind you of?
If you look at the cycle of New York City history since the consolidation, it's sort of like Tammany Democrats, and then a progressive reformer or a Republican reformer comes along. Sometimes they last just for 2 years, like you had Seth Low in the early 20th century who came in, stirred things up, but didn't last long. John Mitchell, who's like a boy mayor, sort of like a Mandani, came along. Tammany got him out after 2 years. Once in a while, you see like a LaGuardia or a Bloomberg or Giuliani, who aren't part of the Democratic political establishment, who hang around for a while. This sort of reminds me of the Tammany reformer cycle. Obviously, there's differences because Mandani is a Democrat, but I sort of view it through that lens. It's different, but there is that cycle, and I sort of see Adams as a traditional Tammany Democrat who's now now is out no matter what.
Interesting. And when you say Tammany, I mean because of the association with corruption? Because he's not really a party man, right?
No, I view Mandani as the anti-Tammany. Yeah. I view Adams as a clubhouse politician. I think that's fair. Tonight, I view he is a clubhouse politician. Mm-hmm. And some clubhouse politicians have been remarkably successful running the city, and some haven't. And then some, like Ed Koch, who weren't Tammany, started playing footsie with Tammany and got into trouble.
Right.
So I view him as sort of the reformer on the outside. Obviously, he's an elected official, like Cynthia Nixon pointed out, but he's been what, two terms? He's in his second term? He's in his 3rd term. So he is almost a neophyte. I mean, it's sort of like the Obama, who was barely, he was a state senator, and then suddenly he was senator, then he's president. And that's sort of the quick spiral I see where Mandani went from nowhere to suddenly being on the verge of potentially being mayor.
And what do you think explains that? Is it primarily the mishaps of the Adams administration?
So, I think Cynthia Nixon had some interesting points about progressivism as a general election, and I think you asked a good question about is there 34% statewide and all that. I think there's always an appetite in the Democratic primary for someone on the far left. Bill de Blasio is a great example of that. The problem for the others in the general election is they're all flawed vessels. Andrew Cuomo has like 20 pounds of baggage. Curtis Sliwa can't break out, can't do what Giuliani or Bloomberg did, which is break out of the Republican mold and appeal to the independents. And so that's sort of, I view going on with the general election races. These are all flawed opponents, and Eric Adams obviously was flawed with that corruption indictment and the deal with the Trump administration, that it's a dream set of opponents for Zoran Mandani. So I'm not surprised. Thinking about it, there's always a path for someone on the far left, but in the general election, it's a different story.
What do you think about the relationship with the press that Eric Adams has had as compared to previous mayors and all the mayors that you've covered? Because I always make the argument, people say, oh, this is like such a nasty, contentious attitude he has towards reporters. But I think every mayor starts out in this honeymoon phase where they'll talk to any reporter, any place, and everything. They're much more accessible, and then over time, there are problems and there's bad coverage that they don't like, and then eventually, he started doing these Tuesday press conferences because he didn't want to face questions every day. But we've seen that with other mayors before. Was this especially nasty?
No, I agree with you. Bill de Blasio's honeymoon was like 12 hours when he was mayor, and it was so bad that they had to reset the relationship with the press and had like a party at Gracie Mansion to invite reporters. We're all like, are we going to get shot when we go to drink? What's this about? And Bloomberg often looked like he'd ate a lemon and then had to deal with reporters. So I think you're right. This isn't some special outlier like, oh, the media was so tough. If you look at what the New York Post did to Bill de Blasio, Bloomberg made. Remember when Bloomberg's first term, there was almost a transit strike, and he bought this like $1,200 bike with the symbol that he was going to use with the people, and he was just ridiculed in the media forever for it. The one who I think had the best relationship with the media for a while until he didn't, probably for his first term and a half, was Ed Koch. And part of it was Koch. You're talking about the weekly availability of Eric Adams, which is like the worst media strategy. Ed Koch would talk to reporters 3 or 4 times a day. He'd go into room 9, this is where the reporters work, and just like talk to people all the time, and he became the story. Rudy Giuliani, even though he had a very contentious relationship with the press, had 6 days a week would have availabilities with reporters, and whatever he did and whatever he said dominated the news cycle. And that, I think, Eric Adams didn't realize is that, yes, it's annoying and they're going to ask you horrible questions sometimes, but if you wait a whole week to pull the Band-Aid off, that becomes the story. And also, if reporters aren't busy covering you, they're busy actually working, reporting, like digging stuff up. And so it's actually, it's the idle hands of the devil's playground. You want those reporters like going to Staten Island with you and to the Rockaways and everywhere else, because half of the press corps then is busy following you rather than like going through your campaign finance records.
I remember early on in Mayor Adams' mayoral T, so it must have been early 2022, he had this event. He was in the East Village, and he was visiting restaurants and small businesses. They had just changed the COVID. God, I barely even remember how this worked. You had to show the card that you've been vaccinated just to get in the restaurant. They had changed the rules, so he was doing like this walking tour of East Village restaurants, and with all these reporters in tow and the cameras and the print reporters. And he was just talking and answering questions. And I remember, like, for a couple hours, and after a while, I was tired. I'm like, when is this guy going to stop? Like, I'm tired of this guy talking to us. and I just like wanted to go back to the station and do my story. But he was too accessible, right? He was, and this happens a lot in the early days and weeks and months of an administration until things sour, like they inevitably do.
And I think what is important I would say for any elected official, is never let them see you sweat. Let's say you want to kill Courtney. She's always asking these questions. Smile, love her. Let your aides go after her, but never be unflappable. John Lindsay, even in his darkest years, Errol did a wonderful documentary about John Lindsay. I don't really recall John Lindsay railing against the media, even though he probably wanted to kill the reporters.
No, that's right. I mean, in fact, we talked with I later worked for one of his press people, Bob Laird, who moved over to the Daily News after the administration was over. But there was an expression with Ed Koch. I think somebody used it actually. Somebody like Clyde Haberman, one of these wise guys in the press corps, who said that the mayor was unavoidable for comment. Right? He would talk about just anything. He would talk about everything. But I later heard from one of Mayor Bloomberg's people that they would, in a very strategic and deliberate way, they would do something like put out word, the mayor wants to ban sugary drinks.
Right.
And of course, that's just irresistible. For podcasters, for television, for gossip columns, everybody goes into a frenzy. And during that day and a half of frenzy, when everybody's talking about sugary drinks and getting man-on-the-street interviews with kids and all of this kind of stuff, they're busy doing their work. Right. So there's tools that you can use if you're the mayor of New York to help control and steer the conversation. Sometimes more seriously, sometimes less seriously. Sometimes you can wear down the press and just take every question until they're just done. But this mayor, Eric Adams, just didn't do any of that.
No, and I think he didn't realize that the bully pulpit, and this happened with de Blasio too, it's going to come to you. Like Bill de Blasio, we know this because of a reporter foiled all of Bill de Blasio's correspondence, and we got, in week 2, suddenly he's emailing aides like, hey, there's this cool thing in Iowa, maybe I should check out. And it's like, if you just do your job as mayor, Iowa's going to come to you. And people are going to want to put you on the cover of Time magazine, like I think almost every mayor has been on. So you don't need to seek the spotlight. The spotlight's going to find you. And I don't think that every mayor has quite realized that. And I would say that definitely was the case with Adams and de Blasio.
No, when I started walking around with these T-shirts saying NYC Mayor on the back, it's like, dude, we know who you are.
Exactly.
Believe me, we know who you are.
Yeah, and I do think that it sort of was the boy who flew too close to the sun with Eric Adams, that there were a lot of warning signs. People saying to the mayor-elect, hey, don't bring all the clubhouse people from Brooklyn with you into City Hall. And he said, I got this. Don't worry, I got this. And I think ultimately that was his downfall. We all sort of rolled our eyes a little bit when he said, my one mistake was trusting people I shouldn't have trusted. There is some truth to that, but people warned him, don't bring everyone from Borough Hall in Brooklyn with you to City Hall, and I think that was one of his big political mistakes. He loved also, it's sort of the opposite of de Blasio, he loved the trappings of the mayoralty, but not the other things that came with it. De Blasio, I think, didn't like the trappings and was interested in Iowa and New Hampshire and becoming the liberal standard bearer and not realizing if you're just a really good mayor of New York, you're going to become a standard bearer.
Yeah, that whole phenomenon of bringing Brooklyn politics over to City Hall, I was like, guys, you can't do that on the other side of the river.
Because a lot more people are paying attention to what you're doing. When you're borough president, someone isn't necessarily foiling all of your activities. And what are you doing? Like, why'd you go to Turkey? You're the borough president. It's not getting the same kind of scrutiny that you're getting when you're mayor of New York City.
No, very true. When he was Brooklyn borough president, Eric Adams went to Azerbaijan. He went to Senegal. He went to Israel.
China, I think multiple China trips.
Multiple trips to China, and they said they were going to build this Friendship Arch in Sunset Park.
Yeah.
They announced that they had $2 million of public money committed to build it. Winnie Greco, they raised $200,000 additional dollars. And I asked just a few months ago, I asked Antonio Reynoso, the new Brooklyn Borough president, hey, whatever happened to the arch? He said, we can't find the money. And there ain't no arch.
But there's only so much ammo that political reporters have. And people say, why didn't you find all that out about George Santos? And there's only so many reporters and so many people to follow. And so if you're a borough president or a state assembly person or a city council person, you're just not going to get looked at in the way you are when you're running City Hall.
Okay. Thanks so much, Bob.
Thank you, guys.
Great talking with you, brother.
Thank you all for coming.
Okay. I want to do one last sort of audience participation quick survey. And I'm curious, who has been here? Let's go back in time. Who's been here since the start of who was here during the Bloomberg administration? Okay. So people have been around for a while. We're talking about, that's almost a quarter of a century. Who was here during the Giuliani years? Okay, some real old timers here. How about the Dinkins years? Yeah, okay, 90 to 93.
Are we going to give a prize for
the Koch years, the Ed Koch years? Okay, a few of us soldiers out here. And, now we're talking Beam. Abe Beam? Okay.
Well, we got some.
Abe Beam, elected in 1973, yeah. Any Lindsay-ites here? Yeah, okay. Right. We did the documentary. I met John Lindsay. I was 5 years old, but I did meet him. Anybody remember Wagner? Okay. Okay. We need to pull this gentleman aside. Okay, thanks so much. It's very helpful for us to kind of know these things. And nobody here remembers LaGuardia, right? I mean, there's no, yeah. Our next guest is a multifaceted civic leader here in New York. You've seen him on New York One, I believe. He's worn many hats over the years. He was a political operative. He was president of the New York City Board of Elections. He was a candidate for citywide office where he faced off against Letitia James as the Republican candidate for public advocate back in 2017. He's a professor of law at the University of Mount St. Vincent and the host of the podcast Centered with JC Palanco. He is never shy about sharing his views, especially when it comes to the race for mayor and Zoran Mandani. Please join me in welcoming JC Palanco.
That was really good.
Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah. You're right there, right? That was good stuff. Yeah. Thanks. Okay. Now, first of all, credit where it is due. Everybody here is going to love you for this. As president of the Board of Elections, you initiated and oversaw the process of replacing those old paper sign-in books with the iPad.
I did. That was all you, though.
Which allows for better and quicker
Errol.
and more reliable. He's one of the few people who reads my column.
No, Errol, Errol invites me to the program and then lets me have it for how long he had to wait online.
Well, that is true. I had a horrible experience.
I went back the next day, and I was like, did you guys watch what Errol said? You're going to kill me.
Well, baby, you
got
it
it
done.
done. You got it done.
You got it done. We got it done. Okay, fair enough. Round of applause for that. So now, you were a Republican candidate, as I mentioned, in 2017. That was the first year of the Trump presidency. You later were at least accused of being a never-Trumper. I don't know if you took that label. But you eventually left the party, or at least activism within the party. What happened?
Well, I tattooed Never Trump across my stomach like Tupac. I mean, really, I wrote a lot. I found the Trump campaign in 2015 to be incredibly offensive. First, how he came to the scene, the things he said about President Obama. I found his positions on Muslims, not wanting them to come into our country. I saw a lot of the things that really offended me and really hurt me a great deal to see a lot of my friends, people that I grew up with in the party, supported. And I just could not understand how people could go extreme like this. And it really disappointed me. I couldn't tell another Latino to come join this party. I couldn't tell another Muslim, come join this party. I found it very difficult. That campaign really changed my perspective on politics. So I wrote a lot about how I felt about the direction of the party, and the party didn't like the things I said. So I had to make a decision. As evident by the results of the 2017 election, both in fundraising and support that I got. I mean, it was clear that...
Well, yeah, I mean, link this up for us, because the party, in my memory, the party, the city and the state, maybe it happened faster than I realized, but I thought it took a while for them to sort of get Trumpy. But did they all just kind of...
Oh, no, it was fast. It was either, you know, and you know, it was... And this is where I don't mean to ruin your Mandani fest. It's been like 2 hours of kumbaya Mandani. But I see the magnification of the Democratic Party Mandani. It's a cult of Mandani. I see it. I see it now. It was either you get in line with President Trump or you're not a real Republican and you're going to get primaried. Similarly, I see the same cult of personality with Assemblyman Mandani. Here you have a new jack come out of nowhere. Backbench assembly member, 33 years old, 3 bills, 50% absent rate. We could go down the list. And it's like, if you're not the future Speaker of the House, if you're currently the minority leader, you better get in line and support this assemblyman, or we're primarying you. You're not a real Democrat. You see it with Senator Ramos in Queens. You see all these Democrats have not gotten in line. It's like, give me a break. I saw a lot of that happen during the MAGA fest. And if you didn't get in line with the Trump train, you were going to get primaried. You weren't a real Republican. You were castigated as a rhino. See a lot of similarities between how the party went far right and how the party's going far left here in New York City. Concerns me.
Not everyone has coalesced. I mean, we still have Chuck Schumer, who obviously hasn't. Hakeem Jeffries hasn't announced yet. I mean, I guess he's saying that he's...
The state party chair.
Have you gone on X? I feel terrible. Every day you would think that Chuck Schumer is the worst Democrat that ever walked the earth. You would think that Hakeem Jeffries doesn't work every day to figure out how to make America better for everyone.
But X is not real life.
Because he doesn't jump on this bandwagon for someone who he doesn't know and whose team is constantly attacking him, whether it's coming after their incumbents. Just the DSA alone has taken out about 11 incumbent Democrats across the state. So how is it that we're all of a sudden going to forget this? So I mean, I hear Hakeem Jeffries, and think about this. You're Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries. You have one job: get the majorities in the Congress. Here you have a candidate who's on video, and this is not me coming up with this stuff. Go online, check it out. Who's on video saying that his goal is to elect more socialists so that we can figure out a way to seize the methods of production. Not me, Google it. This is a candidate who says we have to decommodify housing, which means end private property, and is online right now saying, even today, his support of decriminalizing prostitution. I grew up in the Bronx in the 80s during the crack pandemic. I saw prostitutes up and down Fordham Road and Jerome Avenue. It hurt me growing up. It really formed my view of life and law and order. To see some young kids say, oh, we got to decriminalize it. I mean, what kind of impact will that have not only on our communities, but to Democrats nationally? So Hakeem Jeffries has to win the majority of Congress with having those commercials in purple districts and in purple states? So I think about all of these people attacking Minority Leader Jeffries and Senator Schumer, and I'm thinking, do you understand that this country is a lot bigger than New York City, and you got to get independents and purple districts to support you? It's beyond me, the kumbaya that I've been hearing today. I've been over there, my daughter, I'm like, are you listening to this? I mean, is anyone going to really push back on some of the things that's going on here? This is concerning, because if I'm not a Democrat, but I'll tell you this. I think we need a strong Democratic Party to push back on President Trump. And the only way to do that is by winning the majorities in Congress. And I think that a Mandani election in November makes that much more difficult. And I'm very concerned about the future of what's going on.
Let me ask you this, though. What makes you think that Mamdani is a dedicated, diehard socialist?
We said it.
As opposed to a candidate like JC Palanco, who might decide at some point that they're going to kind of break with the party, that they're going to change their philosophy, that they're going to go where their heart and their values take them, as opposed to marching in lockstep.
I'm sorry, but if you run your entire campaign for assembly to take out Assemblywoman Simotas, and run your campaign as associate with folks, and you're in video preaching some of the craziest far left stuff. Look, he makes Fidel Castro look like Ronald Reagan. I kid you not. Fidel is like, hey man, relax. Let's talk about how the economy really works. Because I believe strongly. Look, and I got to tell you this. I don't want, because my daughter's going to let me have it in the car. Because she likes that. And I'll tell you this. He reminds me of so many of my students. So many, bright-eyed, hopeful, exciting. And I can tell you this. I don't know him, but I think I would love to have him in the classroom. I'd love to be his friend. So don't get mad at me, some of you will. But this is my concern. My concern is, before I tell you my concerns, I also appreciate one thing about Assemblyman Mamdani. His happy warrior attitude is just infectious. And it's just so great to see a young person exciting so many people. He brought in so many voters into the party and to come to vote in elections. And I'm excited to see us having these conversations. It's so much fun. My students email me all the time. They'll see me say something. They'll come and debate. My daughter texts me, oh my God, if I get another text from her about something she heard me say. But it's wonderful because people are talking about issues. So he has this happy warrior persona that's gotten everyone excited. And part of the discussions that we're having are about the job of mayor and what does it entail? And one of the things that is happening now, about 36 days away from the election, is we start wondering, what is the mayor? What is their job? What are their responsibilities? And one of the things that I think is happening now is that right about now, people are asking themselves, this is the CEO of New York City government. That's really what you are. You are the chief executive officer of New York City government. And at some point, we got to have the discussion. You're sitting in for an interview. Could you tell me about your experience and how this relates to the job that you're applying for? Now, I was with Errol on New York One, and I mentioned this. And he says, oh, no job can prepare you to be mayor or president. That's true, but you got to have some sort of preparation. There has to be something in your background that says you are prepared to take this job. Now, can I have just 10 seconds? Listen to me. If you're mayor of New York City, you're responsible for about 350,000 employees, of which include 30,000 police officers, 70,000 teachers, 1 million kids in our public schools, a GDP of $1.1 trillion, $120 billion budget. At any given point, we have 10 million people in our city, at any given point. You got to ask, what in your background says that you're ready for that job? I got that you're exciting. I see your media. I know that you're TikTok savvy. I love it. You've excited all my students. But what about your resume says that you're ready for this job? And I think the press has to start asking the question, because I know New Yorkers want to know, do you have what it takes, other than these great videos that we see on TikTok and your infectious smile and your happy warrior attitude, which I love. But do you have a resume that can fit the CEO of New York City job? And that's a question that I think the press has to start asking.
But no, see, this is what I think we talked about some of this on TV.
Yeah.
John Lindsay becomes mayor. He's a congressman. He has a staff of 10. Same for Ed Koch.
You can go down the list.
Very successful man, though.
Yeah.
Very successful man.
No. But something about, you mentioned Lindsay. When I was with you, you mentioned about it. For all these people, they were. Look, we could go down the list. A member of Congress has an enormous responsibility. where he represents or she represents along the lines of 720,000 people, making laws that affect the whole country. We have an assembly member who just recently got elected who's missed 50% of his votes, who's put in 3 bills, and we act like he found the cure for cancer the way people are acting. He wins a closed party primary in the last week of June with 72% of Democrats stayed home. And he's an international sensation, according to The Nation magazine.
It's amazing, isn't it?
I don't even know where I am. I don't even know what is happening. No. It's called. You know, I don't know whether it's the Manchurian Candidate. I don't know if it's a TikTok superstar influencer that got elected. I don't know if it's a classroom project that took a life of its own. But I got to tell you, this is something like I've never seen before, and it's okay to ask the question because again, it's not personal. I think he's a fun guy. But when you ask him about decriminalizing prostitution, don't just act like he didn't say it. I've been hearing you guys over there.
I've done some reporting on this in particular, and what the response from the Mandani campaign is that that's no longer part of his platform.
That's cute. That's really cute.
It's not the DS, and then you ask about the DSA platform. You ask about, the private property aspects of it, or, the
seizing the means of production and decommodifying housing.
You ask about those platforms within the DSA. I don't know if we have any DSA members out there, but when you ask the Mandani campaign about that, they say, well, that's not part of our platform.
Of course it's not.
Well, that's not part of our platform. So, I mean, what are we as journalists, I guess, supposed to do about that? Because he's saying that's not what he's running on.
I have seen you in action, Courtney. Courtney, you are no joke. I've seen Errol in action. I've been on the other seat. It's been hot fire coming out of Errol when he's mad. I've been on all your seats, and I'll tell you this. Journalists know when someone's moderating for expediency, and this is what's happening now. It's incredible that you just let him get away with it, Errol.
It's not a bug, it's a feature, right? That is what centrist American politics are about. You become a sort of a cafeteria politician. Here's a slate of things that the Republican Party stands for. Here's a slate of things the Democratic Party stands for, the DSA, whatever. You pick this, you pick that, you pick that, you put it in front of people and say, this is what I want to run on.
Yeah, but Errol,
you did that when you ran for public advocate.
But no, I did. I'll still talk about those issues, but I don't change.
You would have wanted me to bring out the national
what do you mean?
platform.
During 2016.
No, but you never heard.
No.
Excuse me. No. If I am on TV saying I believe in the right to life and I believe in all these things, and then you ask me about it, well, that's not my position anymore. You can call me out on it. So no, it's not. Errol. No.
I've been doing this for 40 years.
Errol, the guy is on video saying, and today I want to decriminalize prostitution. And we're saying like, he didn't mean that. He said it today again. When he says he wants to elect more socialists and get rid of private property, he's on video. We're like, oh, it's not part of it anymore. How cute. The closer we get to November, it's not part of it anymore. I think the press has to take a step back and ask the question.
Give me the worst case scenario. What can a mayor do, assume the worst, assume he believes and wants to implement all of these things you just described?
Wait.
What would happen on January 1st?
Hold up. That's before I go into that one, I want to say something about Ms. Nixon. Ms. Nixon said that if you're afraid of Assemblyman Mandani, she can't think of any way. Maybe you speak to him for 5 minutes. Or if you are afraid after that, it's something to do with something racial. That's what she said. She was here. You heard it. And I just don't understand how you come up with something like that. Like, you can't be afraid of his policies. You can't be afraid of the fact that he wants to have a rent freeze that may have a consequence, an inadvertent consequence to other new renters. You can't be concerned about the decriminalization of misdemeanors and how that concerns my quality of life here in New York City and to my kids that I'm raising here. You can be concerned about the fact that if you talk about a store in one in every borough, that puts competition on the bodegas, many of the Dominican Republic, my family, who come here trying to achieve the American dream. That is concerning. So it's not racial. It's concerning about policy. So I think we got to what's the worst that can happen? The worst thing that can happen is that we have a mayor who is pushing to decriminalize prostitution, a mayor that is pushing to decriminalize misdemeanors that affect our quality of life, someone that makes the housing issue a lot worse by freezing the rents, on small landlords that can't even afford to continue paying their mortgages because people aren't even paying their rents, making it more expensive for new renters that come in. I think that there's a lot of danger with some of the socialist policies that he's pushing. And what about the national consequence?
Look, he's talking about free buses. Something like 47% of the people are not paying their fares right now.
That's a problem.
Right? Prostitution. You did a whole story. You did like a whole series on this, right? It doesn't get It's decriminalized now.
They're not arresting people for
Nobody gets
prostitution
arrested
as
for
it stands.
So what are we saying? What is it that we're saying that you're okay with even today when the
but
mayors?
We're wondering why you're panicking over it.
Panicking.
You're
You see the
saying-
words? You see concern. I am concerned.
You're
Darryl. I'm not
concerned.
panicking.
You're telling us
Yes.
we're supposed to
Be concerned.
hold them accountable about it. I'm telling you, we did a story on it. It turns out the ship has already sailed. The district attorneys are not prosecuting this as a crime.
This is a problem.
You might be right.
No,
You
this
might
is
be
no
right.
the attitude. The attitude is a problem. The attitude of
I can't report on what doesn't exist.
No, how about the fact that it's not being prosecuted is a story in itself. How about the fact that if you're in Queens and
We
you
did
live
do
on
the
Roosevelt
story.
Island-
I did the story.
No. The story, no, I understand. But the way that you're saying is, oh, well, there are, and I know it because I saw the story. What I'm saying is on Roosevelt Avenue, you have...
It's disgusting.
It's disgusting. And you know what's going to happen? We have to not say, oh, well, we have to say we're going to combat that because that's human trafficking. That is sending the wrong message in communities. We have to do something about it as opposed to throwing your hands up in the air and saying, let's decriminalize it. And I think that would be one of the many dangers that we have with a mayor like Mandani with a city council that is bending over backwards to prove that they're loyal to him.
Curious who the alternative is. Who are you voting for?
Look, I'm going to tell you this. I will be voting for whatever candidate can defeat this situation. And I think there are going to be polls coming out. And I'm going to tell you this, and I love Curtis Sliwa. He was the only person who supported me in 2017. But in Curtis Sliwa, can I tell you, he's someone that I grew up watching in the trains. So I know that there's some sneakers out there, especially for people who don't know him personally or who weren't living in the hood like I was, dodging bullets, not butterflies. So, and I like to see the guardian angels on my block. It made me feel comfortable. It did. So I appreciate and respect Curtis Sliwa and his service to the city. So if Curtis Sliwa finds that he is in no position of winning this race, Curtis Sliwa has to consider the possibility of doing the unthinkable, which is endorsing Andrew Cuomo so that he can pull this off and stop the
There's
opposition.
no way that's going to happen.
Now, I tell you this, you watch this. I know it's not going to happen. I think it is more likely that I'll be 6'5" with abs and look like Josh Allen from the Buffalo Bills before that happens. So,
In 5 weeks.
In 5 weeks. In 500 years. I don't think that's going to happen. But I'm trying to figure out a way where we can stop this from happening because I feel that the divided opposition almost makes it impossible for him, Assemblyman Mandani, and quite frankly, the DSA to lose, because the Democratic Socialists of America have made the lives of Democrats, mainstream Democrats, impossible. They primary them regularly. They make pretend as if Democrats don't work tirelessly. They make pretend as if President Obama didn't campaign as a centrist and govern as a centrist. They make pretend the Affordable Care Act never happened, and it wasn't because of centrist politicians. We can look at dozens of bills from the Recovery Act. Centrist Democrats made that happen. We take a look at the centrist Democrats that give the majority in Congress, people like Tom Suozzi and Congresswoman Gillen in Long Island. These are the kind of Democrats that you need in order to get the majority, and those are the people that pass legislation that changes lives. You can run the crazy extremists all you want. You're never going to get to the majority. So I think about how is it that we can best position our city so that we don't elect more MAGA Republicans across the country and make it much more difficult to hold this administration accountable. And I think it's definitely not electing Mandani, because electing Assemblyman Mandani is a prize. It is the gift that keeps on giving for Republicans across the country who are already using these ads in purple districts.
A couple of things as we wrap up this portion. I spoke with Mr. Mandani. I did a walk in his district last week, and he was talking about tax cuts, of course, property tax cuts. He was talking about dealing with the high cost of insurance, the main drivers that are forcing the rents up. Sounded like a Republican in a lot of ways. I think there are going to be some practical solutions that you'll hear from him throughout the rest of the campaign, and if he's successful, starting in January in City Hall. And I think you might even like some of them.
I think he'd be a great guy, but I have a problem with the socialist policies. And I think that we have to be a little more moderate in how we approach Assemblyman Mandani. I'm sure he's a great guy, but it's okay to ask about what in his background prepares him to be this chief CEO of New York City government. It's okay to ask, and just not let him get... I'm telling you as a journalist, honestly, I respect you guys a lot. I read you guys. You guys are my friends. I really do. And not just you guys, I really, really sincerely do, but I think it's okay to just ask the question about what in your background has prepared you to be in this position as interviewers. It's okay to ask. And not be afraid of some of the pushback. But it's fine to ask, how is it that all of a sudden you've been pushing for these policies of ceasing the methods of production, and all of a sudden now you've changed your mind 30 days out?
Okay, fair enough, fair enough. JC Palanco, everybody. Centered with JC Palanco is the podcast. We're going to invite some participation. Where's the microphone? I can't quite see it. You line up over here. We can get up to 5 people at a time, so feel free to join us, and we can invite you into the conversation. Let me ask my colleagues something, because we do some of this stuff. Very rarely does it cross over when it comes to podcast stuff. We do a lot of TV stuff together, but how do you put together the podcast? How do you figure out what you're going to talk about? Like, when in the week do you do this?
We do it on Wednesday, and we have a secret text chain. It's
That's
called
true.
Secret Off-Topic Text Chain.
I don't know if we should be
See, I'm
divulging
not
this right now. It's not secret anymore, apparently.
It isn't, no.
Well, Courtney and I, sort of, the two of us, make up 2 of the 3 members of the podcast. We tape it on Thursday. We like to usually pick 2 topics, right, just to kind of keep it manageable. And we haven't had a problem coming up with topics the last few months, or really the last year plus.
Yeah.
But yeah, if you ever listen to the podcast, there's 3 of us. It's usually me and Courtney, and then another member of our political team. We have a bunch of reporters to draw from. Sometimes Errol jumps in and helps us out too. So, on any given week, depending on what we're talking about, maybe we grab Kelly Mena, who's our City Hall reporter, because there's a lot going on with the mayor. But I always have I don't know about you, I always have low-grade stress that we're not going to have enough to talk about in the podcast, right? I mean, like I said, it hasn't been a problem lately.
That's never a fear of mine.
But when you've got,
I always get reprimanded for the podcast being too long. I mean, do you guys think the podcast is too long? I don't know. Oh, look at that. Look at that. Our producer. Do you hear that, Anthony? Yeah,
Anthony
that's what I
Roman,
thought, yeah.
producer extraordinaire. You should wave.
Yeah.
That man. He used to, he was, can you come up for a second? Can we talk to him? Okay, keep going. Of course, he's directing us. You all should know more about Anthony Roman. You and I are going to chat more on You Decide. People should get to know you and what you're about. First question. Sir, tell us who you are, where you're from.
A longer show would be great. I'm Glenn Parker. I'm from Brooklyn.
All right.
My question is, what journalist-friendly qualities would you like to see in the next mayoral administration?
Well, that's an easy one.
Yeah.
I'd love us to go back to Mondays with the Mayor. We had a great time with Bill de Blasio. I think it worked for him. It definitely worked for us. And it was kind of a combo thing, because he would come and talk with me on Mondays, and he would talk with Brian Lehrer and take phone calls from the radio audience on Fridays. And I thought it was great. I know for a fact that he and his staff would do extraordinary amounts of preparation, probably more than they needed to. And he'd come in with all of these notes, and they'd be briefing him in the green room. But it really worked for us, and it enabled us to get a lot of questions processed. Because there are a lot of reporters who are working on a lot of stories, and you need to. There are a lot of things. By definition, if it's a question only the mayor can answer, then by definition, it's a very important question. Only big problems end up on the desk of the mayor after the other 300,000 employees couldn't fix it. We found it very, very helpful to have regular contact with the mayor.
We're hoping with maybe Mondays with Mandani, if we get a
I like that. I like that. It's a nice
we
ring
should
to it.
point out the current mayor was sort of allergic to inside City Hall and did not really like to come on our show.
I don't know what the problem was. I think we could have helped. I think we could have helped. I mean, one thing that many of the officials don't recognize, that it's really a two-way street. That our we can say to him, and we would do this with de Blasio, be like, look, our investigative reporter just looked into something and found X, Y, and Z that none of your agency people seem to have alerted you to. And we're not asking this to put you on the spot. We're asking because we're New Yorkers, we pay our taxes, we all want to fix the problems, and we feel like we should bring this to your attention. Hi.
Hi, well, I'm Leisha from Astoria, but this question is actually from Andrea from Uptown, and she wants to know, when will political podcasts feature the perspectives of younger New Yorkers under 35 more prominently? Ooh. She says she's a 52-year-old here with her 22-year-old son.
Ah.
I feel like we're too old.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Yeah, we didn't start out that way, but That's a very good question. That's a very good question. I used to do something on Inside City Hall where we would go out and get a bunch of, I guess what we would now call social media influencers, but we just called them like, bloggers or something. And there were people who were digitally savvy and digitally present and inevitably were younger than certainly me, but even younger than our already young newsroom. But it's a good question. How are you guys thinking about it?
I mean, thinking about who is the electorate now, what did Mandani do to broaden the electorate during the primary is reach out to young people. So it's definitely something that we should consider, Bobby.
Well, I mean, maybe we should have some guests on the show, on the podcast.
I know we've thought about that over the years, is doing more guests, and we just never quite embraced it because we thought that Off Topic on Politics in particular was a nice insidery glimpse into the New York One newsroom and the way that we approach stories and kind of the behind-the-scenes look. So we do have younger reporters. Bobby and I are the old ones.
We have a very young newsroom. I think, though, there's some HR prohibition on asking them how old they are.
Is there?
I don't know. I don't feel comfortable doing it. I think I asked somebody once, and they, I actually tried to ask them on the podcast, and there was like, well, we don't need to get into all of that. And I was like, whoa, 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 whoa. So I and of course you can't look at people and tell, right? Like, you look at many people, they could be 20, they could be 40. I have no idea.
I did start at New York One when I was 27, I think.
We came in around the same time.
Yeah.
Yeah, tell us about it. Tell everybody what you were doing before you came in.
I was the city government editor at Gotham Gazette, doing long-form reporting there, too, but covering City Hall. So I've been covering City Hall since 2006, 2007, during the Bloomberg years. And it made me think of our previous question is, what would you want the next administration to do? The Bloomberg years, he would take off-topic questions and questions from the press Monday through Thursday, and then Friday he would do the radio show. Mm-hmm. So every single day of the work week, you were getting feedback questions from the mayor at the time. And de Blasio continued that practice, which was just a nice way, like you were saying, to try to get answers from City Hall.
Yeah.
Yeah, he started doing it less and less, though.
Towards the end, because he was running for president. We were asking him questions in Iowa.
Yeah, and Bloomberg was always kind of prickly, right? He would answer the questions. Yeah.
He'd grit his teeth, but he would try and answer. Yeah.
Yeah.
And if you asked a dumb question, he would let you know he thought it was a dumb question.
The many a reprimand from Mike Bloomberg. Yeah.
Hello. Hi, tell us your name and where you're from.
Hi, my name is Amber, and I'm from Yorkville. I watch Inside City Hall every night, and former city government employee. Now I'm in private sector, but I guess my question for you folks would be going into the mayoral election is, what would we like to see for climate change policy? That's something that's very important to me. As someone who managed sort of a fair amount of the East Coast Resiliency Project, Coastal Resiliency Project, I think that's something that's at the forefront of a lot of New Yorkers' minds. So I would be curious to pick your brains on where that's coming from, because I know that all three of our candidates are focused on that to some extent.
Okay.
I'd love to hear your thoughts on that and where we'd like to see that go, because it's challenging and it's expensive, but it's important. So.
Indeed. Well, I mean, as far as I can tell, the leading issue is going to be implementation of Local Law 97, right? Which is the very aggressive, you could call progressive, building standard that was passed by the city council, and it's going to impose pretty strict standards on what building owners have to do. And the bigger building owners, the more powerful corporations, are pushing back. I mean, you can see them kind of moving the pieces around on the chessboard, gathering their forces, trying to get a little warm up of why this is going to have to be pushed back or dialed back.
Yeah. But honestly, they're not talking about Local Law 97 all that much. I think you said that the candidates are focused on climate change, because I feel like we haven't heard a lot about climate change and resiliency efforts from the candidates, and it's our responsibility too to press them on it. But we're also in a climate where climate change is not something the federal government is very focused on right now. So, it's tough because on the local level, I mean, there's only so much that they can do. Local Law 97 is an example of the kinds of initiatives that climate activists have been clamoring for. And then, of course, there's resiliency work, which the city is doing a lot of, and how to respond to when there's massive flooding in neighborhoods and you have people dying in basements, like we saw with Hurricane Ida.
Hurricane Ida, yes.
Hurricane, yeah. But also, I think we have a piece running soon that Dan, our colleague, Dan
Bob
is
just
working
texted me.
Oh, yeah. Our colleague Dan Rivoli, one of our reporters,
Tomorrow.
is
There's a story about
is actually doing a story
on Inside City
tomorrow
Hall.
on climate effort and how it's been playing into the mayor's race.
Yeah.
No, very, very curious to see it. But it's
we're going to stay on it. For a while, we had to be reminded to do at least one piece, every month or something like that. But I think it's more in the regular flow now, which is where it should be. Hello, sir.
My name's Lincoln. I'm a native Manhattanite, and I've worked in news for a while now. I was at the Villager, and then the Village Sun, my own paper. It's a community journalism, and then last year I've been an online editor at the Daily News. And I've just been thinking, and I've watched you guys over the years, of course, and just thinking how we've got this situation now where, we're trying to get Adams to drop out, we're trying to get Sliwa to drop out, just so we can get the mano-a-mano race. What about the idea of if we had open primaries, would we then get like 2 people? And then we wouldn't have the moderate and the conservative vote split, and you're always going to have a strong left base of 30, 40%. We don't know, whatever, you guys know better than me. But the rest of the vote is split. And if we had a woman on woman, whatever, one-on-one race, and I know there's been a push for open primaries.
And it got poo-pooed.
In the charter, was that reform?
Yeah.
I mean,
so what happened was, it was one of the charter revision proposals. It always comes up, I don't want to say always, it comes up every couple years. And
it does come up, yeah.
The party infrastructure, both Republican and Democratic sides testified against it, and they were listened to, and the proposal got killed. Because that's the one thing Republicans and Democrats can unite over, because they think that if there were open primaries like that, Republicans would never be elected in New York City. They wouldn't stand a chance at all, because you would have the 2 top Democrats face off in one another in the general election. That's typically when it's been implemented. That's in Democratic established cities. That's typically how it ends up working out.
But it was close. I mean, this was actually taken up by the Charter Review Commission. They were close to putting it on the ballot this year. And there was enough push. I think I actually remember reading the Charter Review Commission's report, and part of their argument too was that we're throwing a lot at voters with, we just implemented ranked choice voting in 2021, and then to suddenly shift to a completely different system, might be confusing, and I don't know.
You could still do ranked choice and then open primaries later.
Now you're hurting my head.
Sorry.
There are a lot of different variations on open primaries.
Right. Yeah. I mean, the stated reason for not doing it is I think the commission acknowledged that we've had so many changes recently, right? So we have early voting now in a way that we never had before. We have basically no excuses, mail and absentee balloting. We have the registration deadlines have been moved so close, like 10 days out from the election, you can just register for the first time. And ranked choice voting in particular, that they wanted to sort of let this take hold for a while and then see if the same concerns that are supposed to be addressed by open primaries would still be necessary. JC Palanco, by the way, is foaming in the mouth in the green room back here.
He's back there.
Oh, yeah.
He's already been.
What about ranked choice?
He's been in my ear about this for a decade, literally.
What about ranked choice voting in the general?
I mean, I personally, I think some version of a runoff is needed. And that's my major problem with ranked choice voting, is that we're trying to process this stuff, and we've all moderated debates together. When you're moderating a debate for district attorney or for mayor or for some other office, when there are like 9 candidates, you can't really get a good examination of the front runners because there's all these other candidates, and it's all very cluttered. and a cooling off period and a chance to bring everybody back together. That's essentially what we're having in this mayoral race, is that we had this big complicated primary. We had people dropping out and the mayor who didn't want to run in the primary. And now we're essentially having a runoff between Mandani and Cuomo. And I think that's really the right way to do it. They couldn't be more different, right? One, if elected, would be the oldest mayor we've ever had. The other, if elected, would be the youngest mayor we've had in 100 years. One is half the age of the other. You know, I mean, like, they're coming from very, very different places. There's going to be a stark choice. And I think that's what you want.
Well, and the way we do it in New York State now with fusion voting, it becomes hard to do ranked choice in general because you might have somebody running on the Working Families Party line and on the Democratic line. And so, you know, it would require a complete rethinking of the way that the general election is run.
Yeah, yeah. But thank you. This is going to, we're going to probably revisit this, I think, in a few years after some of these. I think we have time for one or two more.
Yes, hi. My name is Fred Smith from the Bronx, and I'd like to make a quick comment in response to what one of the speakers said, questioning Mandani's ability to run anything because he never did enough before. Isn't it likely that he'd attract a very strong cabinet, good managers like Bloomberg did? I don't think that's really a real issue. And second, and I'm not being facetious, a point I want to ask, if Cuomo is so bent on having a two-man race, why doesn't somebody ask him to leave the field and let Sliwa, who doesn't hop from one party to the next, Cuomo just hops from one party to the next, why doesn't somebody challenge Cuomo on that question? Get out of the way. It's time for you to leave.
That's a good point. That's a good point. Well, that's one question I did not ask him when I saw him today. Yes, sir.
Yes, hi, Joe Bello. I'm going to ask you guys to put on the crystal ball, and one of the races not being talked about is this race for Speaker. We're going to get a new council as well, so I'd like to get your thoughts on what you think about the race for Speaker.
Aha.
Well, the race for Speaker, of course, is not something that the voters get to weigh in on, right? Yeah. But I think once the general election is over in November, I think a lot of our attention is going to focus on the Speaker's race because it is, it's the second most powerful position in city government, probably to the chagrin of the public advocate, who doesn't really have a whole lot of power in spite of being the first in line of succession. But there's some strong candidates. Crystal Hudson,
Julie
Menon, Amanda Farias, I think, is a strong candidate.
It always depends also, the Speaker's race and the front runners in the Speaker's race is always dictated by who ends up winning in City Hall. Because going back, thinking back to Bill de Blasio, everyone was wondering after he had his, quote, mandate in 2013, well, is he going to put his thumb on the scale for the next speaker? Because he's coming in with so much power, allegedly, into City Hall. And of course, what did he do? He did. He got Melissa Mark Viverito in, and they were able to install a progressive agenda together. The same could not be said for Eric Adams. He did have his choice, his pick. Francisco Moya from Queens was who he was hoping would end up being speaker, and they would be able to work together. That did not happen.
The early sign of trouble.
Yeah.
And of course, it's the voters don't get to decide. It's the council members who get to decide who the speaker is. But that doesn't mean that there shouldn't be an airing of their positions and.
We usually host a debate.
We've
moderated
debates.
too.
Yeah, we sure have. We did it in 2013.
There's always so many forums that happen.
Yep. It's very helpful, actually, and the council members appreciate it.
Yeah.
Because in the end, there's 50 of them. It's not that easy for them to have a big joint discussion, so it's one of those services we can provide. We are at the end of our time. I want to thank all of the people who put this together. They worked really, really hard. Anthony Roman, Lisa Maitan, I saw Melissa Rabinovich. We have a staff that works extremely hard to make all of this happen, all of our technical people who are here. I want to thank all of you. Like I said, this is how we make democracy work, and we certainly appreciate it. We don't take any of it for granted. I have a very important question for my co-host here, which is, what are you drinking? What are you drinking?
Are you buying?
I think you'll find us over at the bar. Let's put it that way. Thank you all so much. This is going to be online, so you should tell your friends to take a look at it. And, of course, make sure you check this out, because this will be this week's podcast of both Off Topic on Politics and You Decide. And we'll see you in just a little bit. Thanks a whole lot.